Hey, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to this episode of While We Were Working. This is the show that helps you become a better leader of people at work. I'm Joey Price, and I'm joined as always by our awesome co-host here, Sommer, Consulting Practice Manager here at Jumpstart. And this week's episode, we're going to talk about two things that you never are supposed to talk about in business. We're going to talk about it today. The first thing we're going to cover in our While We Were Working segment is about the complexities of religious inclusion at work, inspired by the spread in HR Magazine. We've got some thoughts that we want to share as well. And then the second thing is what happens when you are doing an investigation in business and you realize that there are a lot of unhappy people in your business and they just haven't said it. So you're not supposed to talk about religion at work. You're not supposed to talk about how bad your boss is at work. But it's a podcast, so we're going to cover it all. So Sommer, do you want to go ahead and set up While We Were Working and share more about the wrestling going on with religious inclusion at work?
Absolutely. Thanks, Joey. And thank you, everybody, for joining our show this week. We are so glad you are here. And as we always do, Joey and I scour the web looking for articles. We read magazines, and we take a look at the current events in the people leadership space and bring to you something that we would typically, like if Joey and I were in the office, we'd be probably sitting around a table having just coffee chat about. So that's kind of the premise of our show, that we know you're so busy working that you may have missed it. And as Joey also mentioned, this article comes from HR Magazine from SHRM. I was just showing Joey, it showed up in my mailbox, and I was really intrigued by a multi-page article that online is titled Navigating the Complexities of Religious Inclusion. And, I think the biggest takeaway for me was a lot of companies and even HR pros and leaders have previously avoided, right, having conversations about religion. And for so many years, we've been taught, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, you just avoid those at all costs because they are very sensitive topics. They are things that individuals are very passionate about. And sometimes those conversations can make others uncomfortable. But I think what we're here to share today is that those tides are changing. And so I think there is a greater awareness that we can help bring through these discussions on our show, Joey, and talk about some of those complexities and what companies are starting to do to navigate them.
Yeah, Sommer, I think that, you can look at different milestones in culture as to how we arrived at where we're at today. But I think that we are in more of a bringing our full selves to work culture now that, you could look at things such as maybe recent political unrest or recent social issues. You could think about Freddie Gray, George Floyd. You could think about Ukraine, Russia. You could think about Israel, Hamas, Gaza, presidential elections, and social media. Social media has trained us to have an opinion about everything and to be vocal and share our opinions on opinions. And I mean, you can even say the podcasting boom, right? Where we're all grabbing microphones and sharing our thoughts. That's not something that you can compartmentalize and just leave it outside of work. We are bringing our opinions, facts, feelings, or what have you, in all manner of spaces, and work is no different. So I think it's interesting enough that both topics that we're going to cover today have to do with expression of self and expression of maybe thoughts, perspectives, and ideals. So a really fun show today that we'll get to cover that. Um, but yeah, let's go a little bit deeper into the religious inclusion piece. You talk about scheduling meetings around religious holidays. What are some thoughts around cultural sensitivity in light of uh, religious observances?
Yeah. I think it goes back to Joey what you had initially said about the shift that we're seeing, and I expect that we'll continue to see of employees bringing their whole self to work. And we've been seeing this uh, inch forward over the past couple of years, but I think it's becoming less of a, we had companies who were kind of leading the charge on this, but now it's becoming what I would call more mainstream, like more standard. And so I think if you are a company who has avoided the conversations or this topic to this point, like now's the time to really be thinking about, oh, we really need to be adjusting our business practices because employees, our current team members, and your future employees are going to count on you to do so. And when we think about excuse me, religious expression at work, for for some, it's going to make them feel much more comfortable, and yet to also recognize that for others, it's going to potentially create conflict, and that's where, as an organization, like we have to help our team members on that journey, and at the same time, as an organization, make steps in areas that you can to support that journey. And going back to what you were saying earlier, one example is thinking about your organization's holiday schedule, your time off practices. For example, do you have flexible holidays? Do you have personal days where team members can use that time for holidays they may observe that are not on the regular schedule? But even further than that, I think about like all hands meetings, Joey, right? Like big staff meetings. And one of the things the article talked about was there was a team member who was scheduled to attend a really big meeting on one of their most important religious holidays. And that team member had to go to their manager and say, I'm really sorry, but I can't be there.
Yeah.
And I can't help but imagine that both the team member and the manager like felt bad, right? Felt bad. Like I can only imagine. So from a company standpoint, I think this is one thing where organizations can look at, are we scheduling over what we know are important holidays? And can we have that broader mindset of flexible holidays or personal days that individuals can use? I mean, those are, quite frankly, those are pretty small things that organizations can do to start to make a step in a better direction when it comes to inclusion.
Yeah. You made some really great points there, and I would just add that this religious inclusion piece is also uh, great for candidate attraction. If you can show that you are a place that is um, beyond just the word accepting, but you create space for religious inclusion, that can help you win candidates that you might have had more competition with, because they may say, um, I am not in a majority religion, but I am in a religion that means a lot to me, and because that means something to you as an employer. I think you get me. I think you're one of my people. So I look at it from that standpoint. And I also want to rewind a little bit and talk about religious freedoms from a federal standpoint because it is a protected class. And so someone cannot be hired, fired, terminated, discriminated against because of their religious beliefs. Uh, so we're not even in a position where we could legally, you know, for example, the person who couldn't show up to that meeting because they had a religious holiday. Well, you legally couldn't, terminate them because they weren't able to make it. Now there are, again, this is not legal advice, but there are some caveats to that. There are some BFOQs, which in the HR world is bona fide occupational requirements. Um, but in most cases, you have to allow for the religious freedom of employees at work. So just a refresher in case anyone forgot.
Yeah, you actually make a really great point, Joey, and it makes me think about also, I'm always asking the question, how did we get here? And why? And I think there's a lot of factors, but this article really traces back much of this to COVID and the vaccine requirements. So you may recall that during that time, some companies had a mandate that you must be vaccinated in order to work. And that's when there was quite a bit of activity in regards to religious exemptions. So I think the timing of COVID with the vaccine mandate and now there being a lot of focus on religious exemptions, has really brought these discussions much more forward than they had been in the past. And, just to kind of back that up in terms of, well, what type of activity is this translating to in the courts? Previously, religion in the courts was maybe 3 to 4% of the charges that were brought by the EEOC. And after the pandemic, as these workers sought many more religious exemptions from vaccines, it increased to almost 19%.
That's more than double.
Isn't that wild?
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess in most cases, you operate in an organization where your religious freedoms aren't questioned, but it's when they are that brings up moments like this. So
Mhm.
the vaccines that was definitely a big one. It continues to be one, especially in, I'd imagine, working in healthcare or other industries where there's high involvement with the public. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I could see that. See that. Is there anything else we should talk about on this one before we jump into our consultants corner?
Of course, I do have one more, and I'm so glad you asked because I think this is the one that will probably be the big aha for those that are listening that are saying, hey, Joey, Sommer, this is all great. And, I'm going to go back to my organization and, think about how we can, potentially improve in some of these areas. But I think the the one item that I would, really kind of boil much of this down to, aside from ensuring that your team members are happy and feel supported and you're creating a great workplace. It's also being mindful of the legal aspects that much of this boils down to when it comes to religious accommodations. So real quick, Joey, there was a recent Supreme Court ruling that I think really brought religion into the spotlight. And this article talks about it. And in short, it involved a postal worker who was asked to start working on Sundays because, Amazon started delivering packages on Sundays. And this worker said, I'm really sorry. Sunday is a day I'm unable to work because of my religion, and I need that day off. And so they started disciplining him for not working on Sunday. He left. he ultimately sued them, and the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in his favor, saying that the denial of his religious accommodation could have only been denied if they could prove undue hardship. And like they couldn't, right? They could have other people delivering those packages on Sundays.
And
So I
that's
think that's
the thing,
like,
when it comes to giving people days off, surely a Sunday, but definitely when there are individual days throughout the year where people need to observe the holiday, is your business going to go under because somebody can't go to work? Like if it is, then
right.
there are deeper problems. But I just don't see this undue hardship to the business when people need to take time off for holiday, religious holiday. If anything, there may be a lack of cultural sensitivity and lack of empathy uh, in the mind of the person making that judgment call who said they can or cannot work. But rarely is it like, oh my gosh, the business is going to be on fire because this person didn't show up at work, and we don't have a plan for their absence. Because I tell you what, if they had to go to the hospital, or if it were federally mandated holiday, or if there was weather, you'd figure it out, right? So
Yeah.
I don't, I just don't buy the like the a hardship. Obviously there are case by case basis to evaluate, but mostly, broadly speaking, let these people have a day off. It's not the end of the
It's
world.
pretty simple. It's pretty simple. But I think it was a great example because, even if, say an organization as big as a postal service is getting tripped up by this, it's reasonable to expect that other companies are as well. So learn from their mistake and ensure that, if your team members give any hint that they need any sort of accommodation, including religious accommodations, that you really hear them out and pursue it to an end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, to put a bow on this conversation, I could say that this whole debate around religious inclusion brings up several things that Jumpstart can do. We have a dedicated DEI coach who helps with cultural sensitivity training, helping to rewrite policy, helping to counsel employee relations issues that may come as a result of religious differences. And then we also have our prepaid consulting hours if you need to review policy or create professional development training or talk through issues. And we have employee handbook creation services if you need to write policy. So check us out, jumpstart-hr.com, and you will see that we have a shop where you can actually point, click, and buy several of our services. Or you can schedule a 15-minute call to speak with me and see how we can partner together for the benefit of your business. All right, let's jump into Consultants Corner because this was really good. I'm curious where this came from, but I'll go ahead and read it because this was juicy. I always say you don't really have to. You don't have to. If you're in HR, you don't need reality TV because it's just there's so much drama that goes on in HR. So let's go ahead and look at this. All right. So what do? You're conducting an investigation on one matter, which results in you discovering that a group of employees is saying negative things about the company. They're unhappy about several things, and they've developed a group mentality of us versus them. Do you confront them? Do you leave it alone? How do you save this company from being a gossip mill and, effectively supporting people as they air their grievances? What do you do, Summer?
Oh my. Well, think going back to what you were saying, Joey, some people are like, hey, HR is like boring. All you guys do is like write handbooks and hire people. And I'm thinking, no way. As long as it involves humans, humans will often do very curious things. And sometimes they are against policy. And I think just going off of the information we have, it's pretty limited, right? So we have to make some assumptions here, but I think it depends on like what the state of the current company culture and savviness of leadership is, right? Because I would never recommend something that like really requires some specialized skill that isn't going to be executed well. But personally, I'm a big fan of if you think there is a problem, let's talk about it, right? Because we know that not talking about it and not trying to get to the root cause only creates larger problems. So if it was me, I would say, let's try to identify, who we think is involved in the conversations about being unhappy and starting to talk to them, right? We've discussed state interviews previously, Joey, and that's one thing that comes to mind. Like, let's have some one-on-ones and figure out, are they happy? Are they unhappy? And I'm going to bet they're willing to talk. We're going to discover some other pretty interesting things along the way.
Yep. Yep, for sure. Now, the question is, what is this thing you're investigating? When I think about investigations, not like, oh well, where is someone's misplaced badge, right? It's usually like harassment or fraud or some deviant behavior that you need to have a paper trail and dot I's and cross T's. So yeah, there are a few things that at play here. I would just echo your thoughts of like resolve the issue at hand, but then maybe I would definitely circle back, get a sense from the team, like, hey, through our investigation of this unrelated matter, we found out how you really feel about it. And I do it maybe one-on-one and just say, well, how did you get to the point where you felt this way? And I'd even say, did you ever at any point feel comfortable coming to us about the topic that you are unhappy about? Because you want to address the issue, but you also want to address why people don't feel comfortable talking about an issue. And there could be many reasons for that, but at least allowing people to talk about it in the context of a safe conversation is a good way to make sure that you can build from where you are today.
Yeah, and thinking about this example, and it sounds like what you were saying, Joey, that they were looking into something that was pretty serious and discovered some conversations or information that they weren't exactly looking for. And I've had to do that before, and it's a tough conversation with team members because I think there's already in some organizations a little bit of mistrust of HR or mistrust of management. And I've even had employees like think that I'm reading all of their emails just because and like looking for things. And it's like, I don't have time for that. But the reality is that if there is something we're investigating and we have a reason to go look and there's a need to do it and it's justified, then yeah, we may, right? We may. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened, was that it wasn't being monitored, but that once they went looking, they found stuff that was like, this isn't great.
Yeah.
So, the challenge that I have when I think about, group mentality and us versus them is it's not It's not solution focused. And that's where I really worry that if I hear that something like that is happening, it can't be ignored because we're not talking about one unhappy employee, right? It's like one unhappy employee that gets another 2 or 3 to like join their mindset. And now like it just spreads. So I say don't confront them per se, but like let's open the door for some conversations to get to the bottom of it. And like assuming that team members are willing to work towards a solution. Like let's have a like let's create a path to resolving what we can that's causing them frustrations.
Yeah. So it's a vague sort of broad topic that we're covering, but I think what you're sharing are some practical steps to cover, no matter if this is like serious thing or, you know, why do we always have chocolate cake for a birthday celebration? Why can't it be vanilla? Right? Like you're giving good, helpful advice, no matter where it falls on the spectrum of severity. I'd also say too, in this is just to remember that employees have the right to gather and discuss and air grievances with one another. They're federally protected under the National Labor Relations Board. So it's not about punishing people for talking about the company. You really have to figure out a way to get trust to understand what those issues are and how to resolve them. But is there anything else you care to share?
Well, I think just cautioning companies against, what you were just saying. I can't tell you how many companies will come to us and say, well, so and so was talking poorly and I just can't have that. They're not on board. I want to fire them. So recognizing that depending on the circumstances, of course, that probably most of these warrant a conversation before going directly to an exit. And, recognizing that there are some rights that team members have where, some of their conversations are protected. And you don't want to get caught up in handling that inappropriately either.
Great. All right. And, if you're at a loss for how to navigate something like this, you can reach out to our team. This is a great way to utilize our prepaid HR consulting hours to know that you have a partner that can walk you through this issue, because it's not just going to be a phone call. It's not going to be something that you look up on Google. And even as much as I'd love to say, our podcast it's definitely going to help you in the right direction, but it's not going to be the end all be all thing. So you want to talk to a professional who's been through it before. I can help you navigate next steps. And that's the team at Jumpstart. So check us out, jumpstart-hr.com. From there, you can schedule a 15-minute chat to learn more about our services, or you can actually go to our services page and point, click, and buy our prepaid consulting offer. So without further ado, then I guess this wraps up the episode. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you share with others. And until next time, have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.